Test, test, test. Test, 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 test. Test, 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 test. I think I'm actually live with the entire screen this time. I think I'm actually live with the entire screen this time. Oh boy. Turn this on. All right, I'm still live. Still live. Let me see what we got here. Logging into YouTube. Trying to see what we got. Let's switch account here. Let's go to our viewer channel. When watching, it's got a live mark on this. You can see my entire screen. Let's go to our viewer channel. I figured it out finally. Ha! Okay, wow, this is great. I am glad that you're here and able to see this screen. Amazing. My ear trumpet has actually connected. That's bizarre. Hello, out there in internet land. Okay, so anyway, what we're looking at on the screen here is Snyder and Arneson's Adventures in Fantasy Combat Matrix game. I just want to talk about some of the features. I was just reading through this. Pretty straightforward. So my belief is that this system will enable us to better discern what was going on with the original combat system used in Blackmoor. Yeah, greetings and felicitations. I'm starting to get the hang of this streaming thing, so what I've got to do is have my phone. On my phone, I can watch the comments come in, and on the screen, I can actually display things now. Earlier tonight, I was zoomed in too much because I had OBS, which is how Macs create virtual cameras set up incorrectly. Anyway, so I'm looking at Adventures in Fantasy. And my belief is that they captured some of the early system. Now, earlier tonight, we were looking at the character sheets for the Wizard Gaylord and for H.W. Dumbo, which was Dave McGarry's character. And in both those cases, we saw that every single weapon from chainmail, coincidentally, including artillery, had a 2d6 proficiency. And because they rolled 2d6 for each of those weapon types, the average for one of the character sheets was like 6.66, and the average for the other character sheet was 7.05. So obviously it was a 2d6 system without any kind of modifiers as like weapons proficiency. My belief is that it might have just been as simple as a proficiency check to see, hey, did I hit? And then in the 1973 draft for Beyond This Point Be Dragons, we saw that shields, particularly magic shields, could be interposed for frontal attacks 50% of the time. Some other things, we looked at Strategos A, and there were 3 different types of armor, perhaps 4, that were denoted by defensive value ratios of 1/9, 1/4, and 1/1. The other thing that we've got going on here is dexterity. Dexterity was not in use on those H.W. Dumbo and Wizard Gaylord character sheets. So, to my mind, this dexterity stuff that we see here on the left side of the screen for Adventures in Fantasy, that was a later addition based on Holmes' basic kind of thing that Snyder might have incorporated. Snyder was notorious for overcomplicating things. So let's go through each of the pieces parts. So I think this dexterity thing, especially with all this math, you can just throw this right out the window as far as being something that was used in early Blackmoor. We've never heard talk about people dividing, numbers. Anytime that Snyder is saying two 20-side dice, what he really means here is two of those old-fashioned 20-siders that were numbered 1 through 10 twice over. And so therefore a two 20-sided dice roll is actually a D100 roll, what we would say today. And you can see that here in the table to the right on the body type stuff. So this smaller versus larger characters, though, that was in the Blackmoor supplement as well. So I think, and if you go back to Chainmail, there were modifications for smaller creatures versus large creatures, right? So like dwarves versus giants. So definitely that factors in. I think that was part of the combat system. But what I think we're seeing is that Arneson's combat system was heavily influenced by Chainmail First Edition, in that even though he altered that perhaps with this weapon proficiency thing and perhaps the body, the hit location matrix that we're going to see on the right, and he simplified the combat sequence, it still has so many flavors of Chainmail in it. It's simpler in some respects, but it still relates back to Chainmail, same kind of concepts. So forget this dexterity stuff. Hit chance limits. So irregardless, which is a word apparently now, but there's always a chance of success and there's always a chance of failure. This is a concept that goes back to Toten's Strategos. So that definitely feels like a Twin Cities thing. The combat sequence here, you declare spells. You've got elves that can do split fire. That's totally a D&D thing too from Chainmail. Normal movement, missile fire, magic effect, normal combat, i.e. melee. So combat sequence is very Chainmail-like here as well. Like I said, larger versus smaller creatures, Chainmail-ism. The thing that does differ is the base chance to hit is based on the body type versus body type. So human versus hero, human has a 40% base chance to hit. And then experience factors in as well. And it's actually the experience differential that matters. So if you're a 12th level fighter against a 5 hit dice creature, there's a differential of 7, and that ends up being a 7% differential that's added to the greater characters, the more powerful combatants' capability to hit, or subtracted from the lesser combatants' capability to hit. The hit location, this was optional, so it says that if you don't use this system below, then the damage is just going to be the standard 1 6-sided die roll. But if you do use this system, then this column or this row across the top denotes the damage dice and then a potential for a critical kind of hit, which I think this is a complexity that Snyder added in. He liked to make things more complex. This variable hit dice, variable weapon damage, it's interesting to me. I think that's enough of a critical change. The body type stuff here, that wouldn't slow down the combat too much, I don't think. And then missile fire is slightly different. Again, this looks like more like the 73 draft with the precision missile fire stuff. And then chance to hit, like once again, broken down into three different ranges, short, medium, and long. And the weapons, the only ones that were in this advanced, Adventures in Fantasy combat system was the composite or longbow, the crossbow, and the short bow. Everything collapses into these categories of ranged weapons. So you don't see any hand-hurled weapons. And I think that's because in these early character sheets, there was a throwing attribute, again, a 2d6 based skill. And so hand-hurled weapons, instead of these strung ranged weapons, had a different system. The the other thing is size of the target for missile fire, as you would expect, might modify things slightly as well. And then mounted on horse modifies it. This table right here is adding yet more complexity onto it. So if you're shooting through a door at very long range, you subtract 10. There are some other things here for arrow slits. If I go to the next page, arrow slits, ladders. This looks very much like arrow proof in chainmail kind of thing. Nothing about mantlets, but same kind of concept. Arrow slits are here. So again, all of this harkens back to chainmail. Armor saving throws. So you've got helmets. Again, this gives you a reason for having a helmet. You've got a 1 in 10 chance of deflecting the blow, which seems very low to me. I don't think this body type, it doesn't give you hit location, does it? No, it doesn't. Which is odd because Blackmoor was all about the hit location, whereas this, the body types, are more about the base chance to hit. So maybe this was a alteration. I mean, obviously different dice for different weapons types. That's kind of a Greyhawk edition that we're looking at here. And then you've got two-handed combat. Again, chance to parry is not in here. However, you could do multi-attacks. And then you've got stamina, which is very much fatigue from chainmail. So basically, Snyder's entire system harkens back to chainmail. I do find it interesting that you've got only 3 types of armor. Again, perhaps harkening back to the defensive value in Strategos A. This, yeah, it's interesting to me. Somehow my phone went to sleep. Still looks like you're out there in my ear trumpet, so correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. But armor is treated as a saving throw. We see that also in not the 73 draft, the Arneson versus Gygax lawsuit. This is more like the fighting man saving throw that we saw described in First Fantasy campaign, FFC, instead of the increasing armor class buff that you get for a fighting man in the Arneson v. Gygax lawsuit. So again, this is more Strategos A aligned, more in line with the Beyond This Point Be Dragons 73 draft rule set. So I think Snyder has captured, however, a good deal of it feels like this is where it's at. This is where I really need to dig into and simplify. And this will give me a system, if I distill this down, that looks more like what Arneson might have had. So that's what I'm shooting to do here after I play this raw a couple of times and see where the rough edges really are. And that'll help me figure out what was potentially a complication Snyder added versus something that might have been off of Arneson's head. Arneson seemed to be, I mean, yes, he could have his complexities. Definitely, you see that in the in like the investments section, but those were all downtime activities. Nobody said that he ran things, that things bogged down at the table. At the table, it was all about, speed, it seemed like. Especially if you read Blackmoor Foundation, some of the play test, some of the play-through reports, it just sounds like everything was very snappy when he was running things as DM. Same thing when you review the Tonnesborg descriptions of the way Arneson ran his games. It seems to me like he would have vehemently opposed anything that made the combat bog down unnecessarily at the table, unless the complexity was actually required. There's a blog post I couldn't find earlier tonight where Arneson is talking about the fact that, you don't do this body hit location stuff unless you want to throw in the kitchen sink, and it really mattered about the combat. So that's it. None of this Strategos, dice pool kind of stuff, multipliers, that all seems to be out the window. I think simpler is better, and that's what I'm shooting for when I revise Midwest Fantasy Wargame. I'll still keep version 1 available, but version 2 will have a combat system that looks a lot more like Snyder than it does right now. Right now it's all Strategos, all Totten. And that's all I wanted to chat about besides getting my full screen thing zoomed in here. So that's it. Good night. Have a great day. And I'm going to end the stream now. I need to go. So.